New York, big city of dreams.
I'm coming straight out.
New York, big city of dreams.
NYC.
God, that didn't happen. Lord.
But yeah, I think they'll move him in the right deal. But I don't think they're gonna like make a. Again, this is not anything I've heard, but I think let me put it this way: I think the people there now recognize that last year, from a philosophical basketball standpoint, didn't work. And if they just trot the same thing out there this year, it's not going to work any better. So I think they know that they obviously need to make some changes, but at the same time, you know, they'll see what comes their way, I guess.
Understood. Well, I feel like he works better as a six man, but he gets paid too much to be that. But if we end up signing a actual 3-point shooting big like Bertans, hopefully, even though it seems like a pipe dream, I see your face, Mac.
I don't think they're. I think that guy's agent is doing work right now.
Okay. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Hey, baby, I love Bertans. Trust me, I'd pay Bertans close to like $18 million a year.
I would do 18 in a heartbeat.
I would do 18,
especially if we get rid of Randall. I'll do that in a heartbeat.
Especially
if we put Randall somewhere where we trade up, him, Randall, some picks to trade up somewhere and grab some other young player, and then get Bertans to stretch the floor for RJ. I'm all for it. And then sign Ingles or sign and trade. I'm all for that. Just get us some shooting for real.
Love it.
Let's bring us to another trade proposal from Boston. This is an interesting one too. The 8th pick for the 14th, the 26th, and the 30 pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one a lot of people responded that they really liked it, which leads me to believe that it's probably not realistic. But I mean, no. But if you look throughout NBA history, like there is precedent for this. The Nets trade that got them Richard Jefferson is, it's 20 years ago, and I think the profile, it's terrible what happened to him since, but the profile of Eddie Griffin at the time in that trade was like he was a big deal. He was like a highly touted, there was a lot of intrigue there, more so than there will be probably with anybody available at the 8th pick this year. I just think Boston has a roster crunch, and like they're on right now. Like they don't have any open roster spots, and the thing with first round picks, like you have to sign them unless you're going to stash them. So like even if you give them Bolmero at, let's say for argument's sake, 26. Like that's still 2 picks they need to make. Maybe they sell one, but does Boston really want to be selling a pick? To me, a way that they could try to capitalize on those assets. So, I think my original trade that I wrote had us sending 38 back, and if that's what it took, I'd probably do it. Just because I'm really actually more and more confident that, and again, this may be nuts, but I'm confident that the guy that the Knicks want, I think might be available, whatever it is, 12, 13, 14, then as 8.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there was a report that said the Knicks feel like the talent pool is kind of close from, I forgot the number, was from 4 to 14. I remember the 14 was a stopping point.
Well, Perrin, when he was with Utah in April, said that he said from 15 to 40, this draft is the eye of the beholder. Now, maybe he was just picking 15, out of a hat. But I don't know. I found it interesting that he actually said that number. And look, that was back in April. Is it possible his evaluations have changed since then? Of course there is.
Right.
But to me, I don't know. He's the guy that's going to be making the pick. So the fact that he said it is interesting to me. and here's the other thing. He had the luxury of being honest by saying that, because at the time he was still with Utah, who was not going to be picking in the top 15. So it's like he didn't feel like he was giving anything away by saying that at that
Right.
time, but it doesn't make it not true. So I thought that was interesting.
That's interesting. So he kind of almost showed his hand before he realized he showed his hand. That's interesting.
Maybe, yeah. And they do a ton of homework. Their draft is a year-round process for them. So I think his board then, I'm sure it's not too dissimilar from what it is now.
Exactly. And if you watched our earlier show when we did the breakdown of Will Parent, you can see that he's no stranger to picking well, from Paul Millsap to Donovan Mitchell, trading up for him.
Right.
Utah has a reputation of just picking low and maximizing their draft assets. So I'm very excited to see what these guys have in store. If he says that there's some guys 15 to 30 that are gems, I'm going to bank that he might be right, and we get somebody nice. So hopefully that happens. And like you said, Macri, too, I'm with you, man. I know you said it's not realistic, but to me it's realistic because
I don't think it's nuts. I mean,
for what you're saying, I mean they don't have roster spots. So what are you going to do? You might as well.
And I think they like their team, and I mean, look, if they make a run to the finals, which I don't think is out of the question, like I would think that they would want to keep that core together. And if there's an opportunity for them to capitalize, like the guy, I think I mentioned maybe Vassell or Toppin, but the more I think about it, I think they would go for Okongwu if they made that trade, because it seems like smart people feel like Okongwu might be the best guy to come out of this draft. And to the extent that a center can be the best guy out of a draft with how the game is played right now. But that's the one position that they don't have kind of locked up. So, I could see it.
No, I agree. No, I definitely agree, because if Vassell with the guys they have there at the wings doesn't really make sense to me.
He'd be a bench player.
Yeah, exactly. He'd be a bench player, but you want to get that starting five locked in. So I totally agree. I totally agree. I'll go with that trade as well. All right, we went through the trades that Macri has talked about in his articles. I don't know if you want to talk about any of them more. I don't know how much time you have.
No, I think that those are the ones that I did one more. I did one on the Suns earlier in the week that I would get us Oubre, which I don't think is going to happen. And then I did
Oubre.
I like Oubre too, but I think he's an interesting player. He doesn't solve the problems I think this team has. It would be a upside play, I guess. And he's also an expiring contract. But and then just the last thing I'll say before I get out of here is, like, I think the Magic is another interesting trade partner, because they are a team that, like, so that, like, I think the Pelicans, like, the Celtics are set. Like, they don't need to do anything crazy.
Right.
The Pelicans don't need to do anything crazy. The Suns don't need to do anything crazy.
Right.
The Kings, I mean, they do crazy stuff all the time, but like they kind of have their core in place. The Magic, like, they got to do something. Because it's just clearly something needs to give. And I think that there's they have some salary to dump, and Al-Farouq Amino, who's making unbelievable. I can't believe that contract, how bad that contract is. They gave him 3 years, $30 million fully guaranteed last offseason. That is insane.
Sounds like some Steve Mills stuff.
But it really does. And that contract doesn't get beat up enough. And not that he's like a bad player, but, like, he averaged 4 points a game for them over the 20 some odd games he played before he got injured. So there's a salary dump candidate there. And there's also what was the other one? There was a swap of like the 8 and 15. Oh, and then they have Aaron Gordon, who I feel like Aaron Gordon has been on the trading block since the day he signed his contract. Literally the day he signed his contract, because the contract is a descending contract. And, like, why do you make a descending contract? To make a player more appealing in a trade. Right. And again, Aaron Gordon, he can't shoot it, but he makes more sense at the 4 for this team than Julius Randle does, on defense. And
I feel you. People don't flip if they see somebody else who Scott Perry knew on his team.
But that's the other thing. We know that the Magic and the Knicks have had trade conversations in the past. They almost pulled off a Peyton swap a year and a half ago. Like, that was pretty far down the road. So, yeah, it wouldn't shock me to see those two teams pull off a trade at some point. My favorite one of that is to basically essentially swap 8 and 15. And I think I pitched like we would send them Dennis Smith Jr. and they would give us their top 10 protected 2021 pick.
That is a robbery.
Listen,
of all robberies, man.
honestly, I think I would contemplate swapping first round picks this year and taking on Aminu's contract if it got me their 2021 pick, even with some protections. I don't know if I would do that trade with a top 10 protection, but like if I could do that with like a top 5 protection, oh my God, I would do that.
Okay, let's break. Okay, so next year's 21. Okay,
Yeah.
next year's pick is the deep one.
It's the draft you want,
Right.
with as many bites at the apple as possible.
Absolutely. So, yes, I'm on board right there. How long is his contract?
It's not good. It's 2 more. It's 2 more years. But to that end, 2 things. One, they don't need the money this summer. So really, even though it's 2 more years, you're looking at it as it's 1 year that's going to be an inconvenience.
Right. Okay.
And that last year, it's like if we've learned anything in the NBA over the years, like you could find someone to dump a $10 million expiring contract on.
Exactly.
At the last minute. The Nets dumped Crabbe's contract to facilitate the signings they did last summer in June, and it cost them a middling first round pick. Like you could always, if you need the money, if you need the money because somebody tells you like, hey, we're gonna come if you get the money, like you could. You'll find someone to dump the contract on. So to me, that shouldn't like. I think that's the one thing that I haven't heard anything about that I hope they do this summer. This summer. I keep saying this summer. It's friggin' September in 2 days.
Right, summer's over now.
I know, right? is using their cap space. And again, I have no idea if any teams are going to want to do this because who knows? Maybe we're all making too much of the financial issues. But if they could get a future draft asset, like a real future draft asset, not some like with crazy protections, like. Man, I would do that. If it's a team that's like has a chance to not be very good, I'd do that.
It wouldn't be me if I didn't have sirens in my background.
I was about to say what's going on with it. The block is hot.
It just wouldn't be me. You're absolutely right. They might try to keep their little backup point guard there too if they want to pay him a little bit more money to stay there. And DJ Augustine.
I think, man, I would bet a not insignificant sum of money that Augustine is going to be a Knick next year.
Dude, if Augustine is a Knick next year, I'm happy with that.
New York, big city of dreams.
I'm coming straight out.
New York, big city of dreams.
NYC.